What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. We're back in the garage and we're back to working on the brakes on the Z again. This time I want to show you guys the full big brake upgrade I'm doing on this thing because I'm pretty excited about it. Those are 6 G37 Akebonos and they're going to look so good on the Z. Before we throw those on the car, I do want to clean them up and repaint them. The original silver finish on them is pretty scratched up. Some of them don't look too good, so I figured why not paint them and why not show you guys how to get professional results on your brake calipers at home. Have them looking like you just got them from the powder coater. We're gonna do it for a whole lot less than that. So let's get into it. We are just gonna be using spray paint, and I've been over this a bunch of times, but touch on it again. Before you're gonna paint anything, obviously prep work is really important. So we're gonna scuff these with maybe 220 or something just to get out some of the bigger scratches, and then we'll go up in grit from there so we can get a nice smooth finish before we start laying some color on. All right, we're moving right along here. Now this is definitely something you're gonna get as much out of it as you put into it. What I mean by that is I didn't spend a whole lot of time prepping these things. I did a real quick sand with 320 to get a lot of the scratches out, and then I went over it again with 400. Called it a day. As far as cleaning them go, same thing. I just did a real quick once over with some wax and grease remover, and now I'm gonna shoot them. So we've got them all hung up here, ready to lay some color. I definitely could have spent more time sitting there sanding every little nook and cranny and cleaning everything out super perfectly, but it's gonna be just fine. At the end of the day, these are going on a drift car. I just want them shiny and sparkly, so they look really cool, but I do know they're gonna get scratched up as I take wheels on and off and move parts around and all kinds of stuff. So anyways, let's get some color on them. All right, we got the color laid down. This blue ended up a lot brighter than I planned for, but I actually really like it. And I think it's gonna be pretty cool. Here's a little sneak peek. So that's 3 coats of color. Just tried to lay the coats on nice and even. As a reminder, you don't wanna go super heavy, especially on your first coat. Just kind of lightly cover it all and then go over it again and then again. And in this case, 3 coats was enough to get everything nice, even coated, and you saw how smooth it laid down. Now this next step is completely optional. These look great as they are, but I want to kick it up a notch and have these things sizzling in the sun. So we got some glitter. This is called Glitter Blast. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's literally just glitter in a can. I will say it has kind of almost like a texture to it. So be careful with it, because if you lay it on like really thin, kind of like mist it from far away, you can usually cover it up with clear. But if you do too much or not enough or somewhere in the middle, it could be like weird and textured. The key here is gonna be the last step, which is gonna be the clear coat. So I will talk about that afterwards, but I'm gonna just dust some glitter on there just so these things pop a little bit more. As far as this glitter stuff is concerned, a little bit goes a long way, and I mean that in more ways than one. The camera's probably not gonna pick that up, but the floor is covered in glitter. And you can see just a real light dusting on the brakes. It kind of just gives them a little shimmer. That one kind of got heavy. So I was spraying this from like really far away and just kind of letting it fall on the brakes. And it looks a little weird now, but just trust the process. So the last step when it comes to painting some brake calipers, whether you did the ridiculous glitter or not, is going to be clear coat, and that is what's going to make these look really good and last quite a long time. I've talked about this 2K clear in the past. In case you're not familiar, it is a 2-part clear coat, just like what you would shoot out of a gun on an actual car. This stuff's awesome, and it works just like real clear coat, which means it lasts a long time, it holds up to high heat, and it looks great. The stuff's not cheap. It's quite a bit more expensive than your typical like rattle can clear coat, but either way, I'm gonna throw a link down below to where you can get this off Amazon. Like I've said in the past, if you buy anything from one of my Amazon links, it definitely helps me out, so check it out. Anyways, I'm gonna get this mixed up and then get some clear on there, and that's really gonna make this glitter and the blue pop. While we wait for that paint to dry, let me show you how far I got on the Hydro e-brake line setup, where we left off in the last video. Really happy with how this turned out. So if you remember, we've got the Hydro up there. You can kind of see the line comes out of the back of the Hydro, runs under the center console, and then it pokes out right here where it tees off, goes to one side, goes to the other side. So we're in the wheel well here. You can see where the line pokes out. Obviously it's not hooked to anything because I don't have the brakes on yet, but it's in a great spot. So from here I'll just end up cutting it pretty short, maybe bending it off to one side or down or something, and then from there it'll go to a soft line to the caliper, just like a factory replacement kind of line. Really happy with the way those hard lines turned out. Crossing my fingers that none of those fittings and flares that I did leak. I do still have to do the ones back here, so when I do these flares I'll be sure to show you because I know I didn't show it in the last video. I just realized I also never showed you the brakes since I got the clear coat on them. Looks pretty cool. The glitter may not be everybody's taste, but again, I'm happy with the way they turned out, and I think it's gonna look really cool shining behind the wheels of the car. So I wanted to test fit the brakes on. I was getting impatient, handled them with care, just to put a pair of the rears on so I can kind of get an idea of what it looks like, because I am super excited for this. And of course, hit yet another snag. This brake upgrade has honestly been kind of a pain, and it's my fault. I just didn't do all the right research. I kind of jumped into it because I found these calipers for a good deal. I was like, oh, big factory Nissan calipers, that's gotta be super cool. Not realizing they were for a G37, and it's different because it's a newer chassis, so then you need adapters for the front. And then there's like 4 different rotor sizes and sport and not sport and this and that. And it's been tough matching stuff up. Like I bought the wrong brake pads at first, and now I bought the wrong rotors. So at a glance, it looks really cool. The blue looks great against the yellow. And then you look a little closer and you think, that caliper sits really high off the brake rotor. And then if we look at the back here, you go, wow, if that had a pad in it, it wouldn't really do anything. That's because the brake rotor's too small. That's annoying. Like I said, another bump in the road. It's fine. I should be able to return those rotors, no big deal, and then buy the right ones. I'm waiting on the right pads anyway, since I had to return those too. At this point, I really should have just done the 350Z Brembos, what came on this car, or even the G35 Brembos are the same exact thing. But like I said, I saw the G37 ones, which are the same as like 370Z, and they were more affordable than 350Z stuff. So I thought, oh, why not? Bigger brakes, they're gonna look really cool. Now I see why it's not as common. But whatever, like I said, we'll get through it. Gonna end up with some really cool brakes. I'm happy with how the paint turned out. And at least with them painted and in the right spot, I can finish up making the lines, get the hydro bled, and do all of that stuff. Won't be driving it anytime soon, at least until those rotors show up, but like I said, we can still move forward.
3 days later.
Back in the garage messing with this brake kit after a few days off. Thankfully I got the right pads in, but still don't have the rotors in. Like I'd mentioned, I think in the last clip, it's been kind of a back and forth with that, but I got it figured out, got the right stuff ordered, and like I said, I got the right pads. I'm gonna show you guys how these pads go in because it's pretty cool. I've never had a set of like performance calipers that use like slip-in pads. I don't know if that makes any sense, and if you know what I'm talking about, you're probably like, wow, this guy has never seen those before. But I think it's cool. I'm gonna show you real quick just because it's kind of neat, and then we'll move on to the front because I'm dying to see how these huge calipers are gonna look on the front of this thing, even if I still don't have rotors. Now for the hydro brake pads, I went with PowerStop's Track Day pads. Got a lot of recommendations that these are the way to go for a hydro e-brake. New hardware, and the pads themselves. Oh, these pads literally just drop right in from the top. This little spring clip thing sits on top of those. And then this little pin runs through the back, through the brake pad, through this little clip, through the front brake pad, and then out the front of the caliper. And then there's a little pin, little cotter pin here, goes on this rod that I just pushed in, but on the back side. So you can imagine if this was in the brake caliper, it would go through that way, and then the pin just clips in right there. Love how easy that is. Although I'm hoping I don't have to change pads too often. Hopefully those things last a long time. Anyways, like I said, I'm going to turn my attention to the front of the car because I really want to get those calipers on and see how they look. And then we'll see about making some lines for the hydro. Since I've got the front brakes off, I thought it'd be a good time to replace a broken wheel stud that I've had on this car since I got it. Got the torch heating that thing up. Gonna spray some PB blaster on it here and then try to hammer it out. 2 good smacks with the mini sledge, came right out. Our new wheel stud here, let's get this thrown on. Quick distraction, we're under the car here. This is the exhaust, I just put it back on. And I put a tiny little rubber spacer in between this strap I put on and the chassis. And I'm hoping that we'll get rid of some annoying road noise, exhaust vibration, drone stuff. Because who wants excessive exhaust noise and vibration on basically a straight pipe race car, right? All right, back on topic. Let's get these front brakes on. Let me show you how we're gonna do it. So I've got these really cool aluminum adapters from Part Shop Max. These adapt a 350Z knuckle to a 370Z or G37 front Brembo brake, or Akebono brake, whatever you want to call it. But they don't just bolt on. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so here we have the factory knuckle. You can see where the original brake caliper bolts to. This is the new adapter, and the bolts just go right through there. And you can see we need to trim a little bit right here, just where that hits, and quite a bit more down there. So just a little bit of clearancing on the knuckle, and that should bolt on just fine, and then we can bolt our big calipers on. A little bit of finesse with the angle grinder and the flapper disc, and fits perfect. Let's get this bolted on and see how these calipers look. The theme of this brake upgrade being a total pain continues. I think I showed in the last clip I got that adapter bracket on the spindle. I did not grind down nearly enough. So I got the bracket on and it bolts on just fine, but to actually get the caliper on, it required so much more grinding. Which makes sense because on their website it showed a picture and they literally like cut out a half circle for it. And when I put the bracket on with like minimal grinding, I thought, that's weird. And then I tried to fit the actual caliper on and realized, oh, that's why. A lot more grinding than I thought, but I think we're gonna be good now. If I can get you guys in there to see what I'm talking about. Kind of hard to see, but in there, I had to grind quite a bit of that spindle off to get this thing to fit. But I think I got it. So I'm gonna put this back together, and this side will be done, and I still have the other side to do. One side is done. Super cool. Obviously it'll be cooler when the rotor's on there, but you can still get a pretty good idea of what it's gonna look like, and it's gonna look cool. All right, so the brake calipers are officially on. Obviously not for good because I'm still waiting on the rotors, but hey, still a big step in the right direction. Now let's talk a little bit about this brake upgrade. Would I recommend it? It depends on what your goals are. This is way overkill for what I'm doing, and if you have a stock Power Z or even bolt-ons or whatever, totally overkill. Do not need this. I'm definitely doing this just because I think it's going to look really cool, and one day I do want a lot of power, and maybe big brakes will be important then, but even at that point, it's still overkill. If you want some big flashy brakes that look really cool, and they're definitely going to work really well, it could work for you. As far as cost goes, I initially bought the 2 front calipers and 2 rear calipers for, it was like mid 500, just under 600 bucks if I remember correctly. That was on eBay. They were clean and good condition. I have no questions that they're gonna work great. They came off a low mileage G37. And then I ended up buying another 2 rears. I actually bought them individually because it was cheaper that way. And they were about 100 bucks a piece. So another 200 bucks for the extra rear calipers so I could run duals. So all in all, I would say a smidge under 800 bucks for the all 6 calipers. And then you have to factor in brake pads, which are more expensive because now you're running, bigger calipers. And then of course rotors, which has been my debacle here with this thing. But again, they're more expensive than just regular stock 350Z ones because they're now bigger in performance. And if you are doing this upgrade, they are the 355 mil fronts and the 350 mil rears. The first ones I ordered were wrong. I thought they were the right size and clearly I didn't know what I was doing. So take my word of advice with that one. 355 front, 350 rear. and those should be here in a few days. But again, that's a couple $100. And then you have to get brake lines. Looking at it, I think I could have reused the factory brake lines, maybe, but it would have been ugly. So steel braided lines. I bought just a regular kit, and it was like, I don't know, $120 or something. And then I bought an additional pair of rear lines for another like $60. So again, my cost is higher than yours would be if you weren't running dual calipers. But all in all, I think you could do this full swap without dual calipers for sub $1,000 if you're real thrifty. Maybe $1,200 if you wanted like nice pads and drilled and slotted rotors. And honestly, that's not terrible. If you were to look up like some nice big brake kits, you're talking a couple $1,000s. So for, let's say $1,000 to $1,200, not bad, especially for something this size that looks this cool, that's gonna work this well. And there are a ton of options for aftermarket pads. There are a lot of nice rotors out there as well. Is it the best upgrade you could do? No, definitely not. If you are super serious about something like time attack and you need the best brakes because your car is really fast and whatever, you could probably do better. Could you do better for $1,000? I'm not sure. Are these that much better than 350Z Brembos? I don't think so. I think they look cooler. They're definitely a bit bigger and you get a little bit bigger of a rotor. But if you already have 350Z Brembos on your Z, I would not bother with this. Anyways, let me know what you think. I just thought I would throw all of that in case you guys were curious what something like this would cost if you were interested in doing a brake upgrade on your Z. And drop a comment down below. Do you think it's worth it? Do you want nicer, flashier brakes on your car? Or do you really not care? As long as they work, they're fine. Which these stock brakes worked fine. Obviously, not the handbrake and all that. And it's going to be amazing having a hydro. And that was a whole part of this upgrade. So I'm not including all the costs of that in that as well because I'm just trying to talk about the big brake upgrade, but that's definitely part of it. And that's what made this whole thing front to back so much more expensive and so much more time consuming than I initially thought. Because like I said, when I first found these brakes on eBay, I thought, oh dang, that's a pretty good deal. I can get some real cool brakes for $500 or $600. And then it snowballed and now we're deep in it and whatever. It's gonna be worth it in the end. It's gonna look cool and it's gonna perform real well.
3 weeks later.
Another day back working on these brakes. Today we're gonna get the lines finished up for the hydro. I can finally show you guys how that flaring tool works. And we're gonna get a soft line hooked up to the hard line that I ran to the back. And then the system for the hydro should be pretty well complete. All right, so here's what we're working with. I've shown you guys the hard line before. This is the one that's ran from the hydro to the T in the trunk and then out right here. And then obviously we've got our brake caliper, still not bolted on yet. And I got some StopTech brake lines, if you need the part number there. These are just factory replacement, obviously braided steel lines just for the rear of a 370Z or G37. I think they're the same for a 350Z, to be honest with you. But I'm gonna end up bolting this to the caliper one way or another, just so I can kind of figure out how long this is and then where we're gonna route this hard line. All right, I think I got the line routing figured out for this. Let me show you what I got. So obviously we have the line coming off the brake, coming on up here. This was a factory stud that bolts this like plastic shield for the fuel filler neck. So I just made a little L bracket out of some sheet metal, drilled some holes in it, and then it mounts to this little mount that came on the line from the factory. Figured I'd use that since it's there. And then it puts the line pretty much right here. I just have to figure out how I'm gonna do the bend for that. But yeah, I think that's gonna work out pretty well. So I'm gonna cut this down a bit, bend it probably just at a 90 that way, and then I will flare it so we can get this thing all hooked up. Step one, make sure your fitting is on. Don't flare the line beforehand. Ask me how I know. All right, so we've got part of our flaring tool on. You can see the line is just barely poking through. One thing to note, it's important not to have any tight bends right around where this line's gonna come out. Because if this line's not coming out of here straight, the flare on it won't be even and then it won't seal. But this looks like it's pretty good. I think it's sticking out enough. That's kind of the issue I've been having, is it's really hard to know exactly what the right distance is, but I think that's gonna be good. The next piece is this little thing. I don't know what it is, but it's got that little pin that slides right in the line and that stays there. And then this clamping looking thing goes on. You can see where it's gonna be pressing on that black little thing we just put in. And then it's just as simple as tightening this thing down with this little handle here. And you tighten it until that black insert is flush with the silver tool here. So I'm gonna work on tightening this down now. All right, with that part done, now we pull this guy out. Sometimes that requires a bit more force. But you can see it's just kind of turned into like a little round bubble almost. So that is one part of the flare. This is called a double flare. So let me show you how we're gonna achieve the second part. We're gonna use this same clamping thing, but without the black insert. You can see the tip of it is just this pointy thing. So we're gonna line that up right on the line and then just tighten it down again. All right, now you can see that line is flared, the fitting's right up against it, and it seems to fit pretty tight there. So we should be good to thread this on the line and call this side done. All right, got it all hooked up in there. Looks pretty good. I'm really hoping I didn't kink that line. It's kind of hard to tell, but it was tough to get it bent that sharp. And I can't really tell if it just looks, if it's okay or not, but I guess there's only one way to find out. And got this side done as well. Same thing. Actually did a really similar bracket setup off an existing stud there. And then it goes right up to the hard line there. Nice and simple, tucked out of the way, should stay in place. As long as those fittings are good and don't leak, the hydro e-brake system should be set. Next, I gotta wrap up the actual braking system, at least the lines, because I wasn't gonna just buy nice braided steel lines for the hydro. I got them for the whole car. So I'm gonna swap out the old factory rubber lines, get the new braided steel lines on, and that way everything will be done and ready when those rotors finally show up. Also, I wanted to show you a little trick with these clips that hold brake lines in the factory location. Those ones right there. If you take a wrench, get it right on this lip and just kind of pry against it. See how it's coming out just like that? Easy as that. No fussing with pliers or screwdrivers or hammers or anything. Breaking news. Get it? Because we're talking about the brakes. The rotors are here. Finally got all four corners with the brakes on, with the rotors, with the lines, and the pads. It's all on the car. I still have to bleed it, but I can do that off camera. Let me show you what it looks like because it looks really cool. Seriously, it turned out really cool. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have any driving clips or testing with this new brake setup because I still have a lot of work to do before Drift Week, and there's no sense in me putting this thing back together, getting it back on the ground just to go out and test it when I know I have so many other things to do and so many other things to test. But I am going to wrap this video up here because I feel like it has dragged on forever. Hopefully it hasn't been too bad for you guys. I know it's just been bad for me because it's literally been like a week and a half of exchanging parts and things that don't fit and all this back and forth, but we finally got it. It looks sick. I really hope it drives good, and it should. Everything's gonna be fine. Like I said, guys, that is gonna be a wrap for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're thinking of doing a big brake kit on your Z, maybe this is something you wanna consider, maybe it's not. Like I said, this could have been done a little bit cheaper. Obviously, if you're not running a dual caliper hydro setup, it definitely could have been done cheaper. But it's pretty cool to use all OEM Nissan stuff, except for like the adapter bracketed. And they're huge. Like I said, these fronts are 355 millimeter rotors. That is massive. Super overkill for what this car is, at least for now. Maybe someday it'll need big brakes like this. Anyways, I'm just rambling at this point. Like I said, I hope you guys got something out of this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. And there's a lot of content to come because like I said, we are on a grind to get this thing ready for Drift Week. So be sure you are subscribed because once Drift Week starts, the content's gonna be insane. Cannot wait to show you guys that. Speaking of which, before we close it out, I have to mention again, Drift Week. I will be at Honda Muscleman Circuit February 18th and 19th. That's in Arizona. And if you're in the area, definitely come out. The other public day is February 25th and 26th. I will be at Adams Motorsports Park. That is in Riverside, California. Both of these times at Arizona and in Riverside at the public days, I will be selling ride-alongs as well as stickers for both days. It's a Saturday and a Sunday. I'll be there all day, both days, as long as the car sticks together. Find me, come for a ride-along. We'll get to tandem with legends like Forrest Wang and Naoki Nakamura and have a ton of fun. So if you're in either of those areas, definitely hit it up. I'll put a little flyer right here. That'll have all the details in it. I hope to see you guys out there. But until then, catch you in the next one.